What if our food was made out of thin air?
Actually, every one of us breathe out about 1 kilogram per day of CO2. We can make from that 250 grams of protein.
Hey everyone, in today's video we're going to talk about a super cool company, and actually this is the reason why I decided to name this channel Space Foods, because after I heard about this company over a year ago I started looking into this whole food industry, and it's like, wow, super cool, and I just really like the technology. If you're an agronomics investor, you'll be especially interested in this one. You probably know about them already. I put all of the video links in the descriptions. I'm really just trying to collate all this information. Why am I not doing my own interviews? It's because I might someday, we'll see. I don't know where I'm taking this channel yet, but for right now, I'm just trying to collate all this information. And so that's why I'm taking clips of different videos. One that I really recommend you watch the full clip is from the interview. That's one of my favorite YouTubers, and they do a great interview of this company, so go check that out. So basically how I'm breaking this down is we're looking at just an introduction of the company. We'll be looking at their costs. We'll be looking at their production plans. So their factory is going to be coming online in 2024, so next year sometime. And then we'll be looking, they recently did a tasting event in Singapore, and so we'll be looking at that as well. Finally, if you're in Singapore, you can actually buy Solein chocolate gelato ice cream at the same restaurant they did the tasting event at, and that's now for sale through summer until the end of August. So go check that out. I've also put a link to the address on my Novel Foods tasting map. Let's get into the video.
A new way to feed. A new way to grow. 1,000 ways to cook. It's delicious. Nutritious. The most sustainable protein in the world. The dawn of the future of food now begins.
So from background, I'm an energy guy. And in this talk, I will walk you through the view, how we see the future in the company based on the research what we did. And at the end of the talk, I'm sure you will feel that producing food from the air and how we do it, it's a natural derivative from how we see things will develop. Now, one could think that there have been 3 industrial waves and the 4th is coming. So all of these changes in the past, in the human history, we say or think that have been due to the simultaneous development in energy and in information. And energy has to do also with food. So about 100,000 years ago, in the hunter-gatherer societies, we learned to cook vegetables and meat, and suddenly we had a lot more energy for the brain, and the spoken language developed, and this energy then facilitated development of information, which was the development of spoken language, and that was able to reorganize or facilitate the reorganization of the society. Okay, that was the first stage. Then, about 10,000 years ago, we learned how to practice agriculture. Suddenly, we had, on those terms, a limitless amount of energy, also spare time, and the written language was developed, and that facilitated together, or those two together, energy, food and information, reorganization of the society, ending up to the Roman Empire and city-states and so on. And now we'll be living the third wave, which is the industrial wave. We learned how to use fossil energy resources. We learned how to use fertilizers to grow food. And then radio and TV developed, and that resulted, or those two resulted in the true globalization, so reorganization of the society. And now one could say that the renewable energy sources, new energy sources, they have become very cheap very quickly. That will facilitate the new energy infrastructure together with the information infrastructure, which is basically the cell phones and internet, what we have. So everyone has all the information in the world real time available for free. So that's different from before. So these together could take now to the humankind to a new level and let us reorganize, meaning that the neighbor might not be important for you in the future, but the bubble is in the social media and is truly global. And we are the food company of the fourth wave. Now, basically, we live in the world where we need to achieve full carbon neutrality and develop the emission-free world. Also in what comes to energy, but now for food. So anything that is in contradiction on developing carbon neutral world by the mid of the century doesn't work out in our plans. Because of my background and the research what we did around energy, we know how technically the energy system can be built carbon neutral, even with 100% renewables, including all the energy storages and so on. So technically it's there. The rest is political will if we want to go there. Kind of for a researcher, it's a job done. Now, there's more of a problem in the food side with increasing population. Already now today, about 20% or 1/4 of the greenhouse gas emissions and carbon footprint due to human action is due to what we eat, and that also should be zero by mid of the century if we want to comply with the Paris Agreement, IPCC reports, and so on. Now, what to do with that? Now, also, what comes to the use of land. Actually, this was mentioned, referred to before. So already we use much of the land. I see there's a problem actually in the chart. Most of the land, what we use for agriculture, is due to production of meat. And still it represents a small fraction of the calories. Now, if we want to derive twice the amount of food and calories from that piece of land, it's not just possible. So how to resolve that? That's one question. Now the second is about aquaculture. So if we go to the sea to get fish, fish is the primary protein source for about 1 billion people, an important source of protein for about 2.5 billion people. But the global fish catch occurred 20 years ago, and since that it's been in decline. Now, the solution we've been working on is to use electricity, cheap electricity, as the primary energy. We know that the cheapest electricity today is actually on the sun belt and produced with solar PV. And if we want to make the energy system carbon neutral and emission free, and also the food system, electricity would be the new primary energy. Burning things, exploring fossils, burning things might be a bad idea. We need to electrify. Whether it is CCS, so burning fuels but capturing the CO2, using nuclear or renewable energy sources, it's your choice. But whatever that is, still the electrification is the underlying theme in the energy research. So with that, and especially with renewables, electricity and the amount of power generated by PV during the daytime, we need to think where to put all that power. So that's the philosophy of thinking how electricity would be primary energy and raw material. So in terms of solar PV, we know that because of the cost decline, this technology has become the cheapest form of electricity on the planet. And this is important for us because if fundamentally on the planet the price of electricity generation would go up, we would be in trouble. But we think actually it's in decline. Now, in addition to electricity and electrifying things, possibly also food production, but also transportation, heating, cooling, industrial processes, another side of the coin, the puzzle, is how to deal with carbon. And what is possible is actually to start to use CO2 as a carbon source. So instead of exploring fossil carbon from the ground and turning that to CO2, we can actually recirculate with electricity CO2 to fuels or edible calories. Actually, every one of us breathe out about 1 kilogram per day of CO2. We can make 1 liter of fuel from that and 250 grams of protein with electricity. Now, food out of thin air. The idea is that in the company we have the technology available to capture CO2 and water from the air. So that is what we need as raw material. Then we need some nutrients and vitamins and electricity. And in a very fundamental way, this process actually binds CO2 rather than emits. It's a fermentation process. So what happens technically is that we use fermenters like this. So referring to beer making again, what we do is we grow the cells in a liquid medium, but instead of giving sugars and having the sugars liquid, which is an agricultural product and a source of carbon and energy to the cells, we introduce into the reactor small bubbles of CO2 and hydrogen, and then the naturally occurring organisms that we have extracted from the nature can use these two as a source of energy and carbon. And that is the point where the disconnection to agriculture takes place. So what you end up with is actually a powder. So it's like a very fine powder, similar to wheat flour and neutral in taste. So it's kind of an ingredient. What we can achieve with this technology is that we are free from the constraints of weather and climate and agriculture and use of arable land. So we can produce food in desert, on the Arctic, or even in desert. The ESA logo there tries to say that actually we have approached with the European Space Agency to develop a concept or a version of our technology for the Mars missions, because we can make food in flight or at the destination in Mars. Actually, the Mars gas atmosphere is mostly CO2, and solar power we have available. Now, we see this technology as a platform technology. One of the problems is the food homogeneity. About 75% of the calories globally are from 17 species, 12 plant species and 5 animal species. And 60% of the plant-based calories are only from 3 plant species. So this is one thing. Now, with the using of small life microbes and bacteria, grow them and use them as food, opens new diversity of food, because most of the variety of life is actually in a small life. So there's actually it is said trillion species available in that kind of new harvest that we haven't been able to grow before. And because of this closed process, we use significantly less water. We don't need irrigation or anything like that compared to agricultural products or beef. Again, some problem on the slide. And what also is possible because of the industrial production is to use land much more efficiently. So producing food from electricity is fundamentally more efficient than using the natural machines of animal or photosynthesis. So about the platform now, how do you use this powder? There are 3 ways or 4 ways actually how you can use it. One is that you use it as an ingredient in a current edible products, let's say bread, treats, shakes, and things like that. So it's kind of an ingredient. The second use could be plant-based meat alternatives, so new kinds of foods. It could be an ingredient there. And the third one is cultured meat. So still cultured meat needs the amino acids and energy from somewhere, and where the cells grow, we could actually provide that amino acid cocktail and some of the sugars for the cells to grow.
Production cost would be around $6 per kilogram on 100% protein basis. It's more than it's higher than soy, but I think the segment what we are aiming at, the rest of the field after soy, we're quite comfortable with that. and we're quite confident that it could be accepted on that cost level. If we go to and that would be in the conditions of Nordics where we are now, with the labor cost and all the taxes and that. But if you would go to the cheapest source of electricity and scale that factor, we see a floor cost that is around $2 or so per kilogram of 100% protein. So then we are roughly there, matching soy soon for human consumption.
Yeah, my name is Arttu Luukonen and I work for a company called Solar Foods. I just want to start off by saying that I'm really happy to be here in DC with my daughter. Having spent here 4 days, I think I'm starting to thaw out. It's nice to see the sun again. Actually, at the heat, when I had the lunch, I was always like feeling wearing a towel and having a beer in my hand. That's usually the temperature that happens. So we at Solar Foods are actually one of the finalists for NASA Deep Space Food Challenge. After the event here, I'm actually heading out to New York, where the finalists and the winners will be announced on actually tomorrow. We heard the other day, actually, one of the panelists, Jancy McPhee from NASA, indicating that one of the largest areas of which needs de-risking is food when we're considering manned Mars missions. We at Solar Foods are executing our prime objective here on Earth to actually provide the mankind with a sustainable source of protein that has a fractional use of land, energy, or water. We see significant future business with basically the largest food manufacturers here on Earth. Our method of producing food, and by the way, what's rolling up here on the screen is our prototype design of the spacefaring bioreactor system. But what is one of the key features of our food production process that it is completely disconnected from agriculture? What we do is basically, it's called microbial gas fermentation. We have discovered a single-cell organism from the Finnish nature, and this organism uses hydrogen gas as its source of energy. It gets its carbon from CO2 that we capture directly from the air. Because we can actually use the hydrogen that is already produced on board a spacecraft, you remember there is an electrolyzer that's producing the oxygen for the crew, but the hydrogen is treated as a waste product and vented primarily to space, either in form of a hydrogen or methane. Because we can recapture that hydrogen, we actually save a lot of water, which could be about 0.5 liter per day per crew member, which actually adds up if you're on your way for a long period of time. We are very low on TRL with respect to space at this moment. We have started our first space projects, and we'll look to partner up with the future habitat companies and also agencies on LEO, and of course have our eyes steadily set on Mars. We won't be the only food that probably has to be produced. We just saw the wonderful Mars, the prize presentation. Some agriculture is very likely to be needed, given that we make protein, we don't make carbohydrates and sort of high caloric content food. So there's plenty of space for innovation for food production, but we think that protein and this method of protein that we produce is particularly well suited with ECLES systems on board the space habitats, and protein is one of the hardest parts of that diet that you need. All right, that's my pitch.
Can you show the people what you brought?
Oh yeah, I got some here. So the food or the protein is basically this kind of a dry yellowish powder. It is yellow because it's actually very high on beta carotene, so it's almost like my boss puts it, it's an average between a steak and a carrot from a nutritional standpoint.
I'm Oliver Truesdale. I launched a company with Lo and Behold called Regrowth, which is focused on sustainable hospitality. I also head up the F&B Sustainability Council in Singapore.
And I'm Mirko Febrile, currently chef partner at Lo and Behold for FICO.
All right, guys, so today we're doing a little bit of R&D. Brand new protein called Solein. It's a microbial protein, so super high efficiency. Check it out. Also very colorful, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, where's the color from?
Carotenoids, beta carotene. Same color as carrots, but it's from the microbe itself, so all natural source.
It's nutty and buttery, creamy,
It's fatty, for sure. Like nuts.
Yeah. All right. So in terms of menu, what are we thinking?
I think by tasting it, it feels like it's quite versatile. It seems like it. And if I think about butter, dairy, eggs, we can really work on replacing it.
Thinking about maybe some local twist to it.
Yeah, Singapore inspired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think when you were talking about egg, I was like, oh, salted egg.
Salted egg.
Salted egg could be really fun. And that's
Absolutely.
Singapore, yeah. So that we keep the idea that it's like protein replacement. Yeah.
How about like a dessert?
Ice cream comes to mind for sure.
Yeah.
Like I think doing it really pure, like having one course, because we're gonna have courses where it's heavily manipulated, one course where it's just like pure.
Yeah.
I was also thinking about a pesto.
Yeah.
Like a rampa, like with coconut milk, lime, chili, thick pasta, and then adapt it and change it to Singapore.
Yeah.
Inspired
I love
by
it.
that. Yeah? With local herbs.
Yeah.
Yeah, sweet. All right.
Excited.
Yeah, let's have some fun.
Today we do a Singapore version of the Italian pesto. So we're gonna use laksa leaves, Indian borage, basil of course. There's this beautiful bronze fennel. They're all herbs that are farmed here in Singapore. You know, I was thinking like the creaminess of it, what we do with lecithin. Think about like a curry. We have a beautiful emulsified paste. Okay, we're done. Singapore pesto. So now we can taste it.
Wow.
How fresh is that, right?
I like the idea of a product that at once can be responsible and could find itself in situations where you're helping like disaster-stricken areas, but also could find a place at a fine dining table. Because there's not many products that like bridge those gaps. And so it'll be healthier for people, it'll be healthier for the planet. We're gonna play with it as a miso kind of allegory as well. So like maybe mixing it in miso soup in like half the percentage you would usually mix miso and see how that goes.
The fact that it's easy to replicate that kind of concept, which is now in Finland, everywhere in the world basically, right?
Yeah, it could be outside the world as well, right? Yeah. We were discussing it as like maybe space travel that required just like air and electricity to generate nutrients. But also, yeah, deserts or really mountainous areas or places that don't have a lot of arable land. They'll still have access to the inputs needed to produce Solein. The idea basically is to incorporate something that's really familiar for people locally, but introduce something that's completely foreign to everybody globally. So we chose salted egg, like cereal prawns almost, playing around with local flavors, and then we wanted to do a replacement of egg in a local dish. We have pumpkins seared off. Batter's made out of Solein, just the base. And then we're coating up and going back in the pan. So it's like twice fried almost. For the end of the meal, we just wanted to finish really light. We wanted to do something that was pretty much pure Solein. We decided that since it has such a velvety, lovely, luscious consistency, we would roll with ice cream. So another element to the versatility of Solein. Right now, what's happening is all of these high-tech foods, the cell-cultured meats and everything, are trying to enter the industry through fine dining and high-end to garner attention, which is great. But then what we need to see is them reach a scale where they can get into the environments that are accessible to everyday people.
To the mass, to everyday life. It can be really impactful if big businesses are actually setting the benchmarks. And how can you see the impact of Solein in everyday life of people? I think as a chef, it's absolutely necessary to achieve food responsibility. Definitely Solein has the potential to really change the game here. Make the industry, the food chain, the food production a more sustainable one and also like a mindful one.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.